Ciao a tutti. This is Dario Betti, and I'm excited to be part of Humans of Telecom.
Hey everyone, a very warm welcome to Humans of Telecom, the Unplugged podcast. This is your host Anurag Aggarwal, Chief Growth Officer at Globe Teleservices. As you all know, this podcast takes you behind the scenes of the fast-paced world of telecom and showcases the human side of some of the most well-known individuals within this industry. Well, since I've mentioned the word industry, our guest today is someone who is so very well known within our telecom and CPaaS industry that he hardly needs any introduction. After having been in the telecom space for over 2 decades now and worked with leading brands such as T-Mobile and Ooredoo, he has now been successfully leading one of the biggest and most popular industry associations that is spearheading so many initiatives that endeavor towards making our telecom space a much more cohesive and collaborative space to work in. So, without further ado, please join me in welcoming Dario Betti, Chief Executive Officer at Mobile Ecosystem Forum. Dario, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for agreeing to be a part of this journey. We'd love to hear more about you. Which part of the world do you belong to? And from where are you joining this podcast today?
Hello, Anurag, and thank you for inviting me here to this illustrious space for the Humans of Telecom now. Well, I'm in London today, as London is the main office for MEF, but I'm Italian, and specifically I come from Tuscany, Florence, so the central part of Italy.
Yeah, and definitely one of the most beautiful parts of Italy as well, I'm sure.
I would say so, but that's my bias.
But, Dario, I mean, exactly the point that you come from such a very different part of the world, Tuscany, Italy, while geographically it might not be too far from London, but in terms of its entire geography, in terms of the beauty and in terms of the landscape and the overall culture, how would you compare Italy and maybe more of Tuscany with London? How are they similar, different? What is strikingly different and similar about the two places?
I would probably say that the first thing I find more Londoners in Tuscany now than in London itself. And that's how much of an international city London has become and how much of an attraction for Englishmen and Englishwomen like Florence and Tuscany have become. But seriously, the great view that I still love Tuscany and I still love to go back. There is old culture, this great thing. What you don't find there is the newer culture. I think the vibrancy that London as a big city has got, and I do like that as well because it's slightly slower, slightly more provincial, and you still find a lot of time to eat and talk to people, which is fantastic for me. Unfortunately, I'm on a diet, so I better watch out of how much of that I do. But so the two of them are extremely complementary, I find, and I love jumping from one to another. As a matter of fact, every now and then, as most of the people here at MEF, we are virtual, so I spend a couple of weeks or 3 weeks working in Italy as well, and it's fantastic. It's very nice.
Wonderful. And I so agree with you that I think it's so important to be in a part of the world which is away from the typical modern hustle bustle which we all face on a day to day basis. And I think from that perspective, one can't ask for something better than Tuscany for sure.
Indeed.
All right. So from Tuscany to UK, where you are today, and to Mobile Ecosystem Forum, which you are so successfully heading now, how has your journey in telecom been? Would you take us through some of the highs and possibly the lows of your career, and how has it been for you so far?
I've been very lucky. I think I haven't taken decisions about my career itself. Things just happened. It was a great element of serendipity in there. I did always wanted to play with telecoms. Imagine some of the kids when they're very young, they like trains, they like construction. I liked TV and interactivity and telecom. Those are the two things that I thought they're coming together and they should be coming together. So I then studied communication. I've prepared myself since the year 7. I was kind of keen in doing it. And then it just happened. I mean, I started working as an analyst, which was great. It was like being paid for what I was used to do for fun, pretty much, even for even a university, just looking at strategies and what's going to happen. And that was the end of the 90s, showing my age a bit. But the great days of the first convergence, internet coming, and eventually early 2000s, it was the boom of the mobile. So all of them coming together. Great time. And ever since, I've been then joining mobile operators, as you mentioned, T-Mobile, Deutsche Telekom, Ooredoo, Axiata in Southeast Asia, and MTS in Russia as well. So I then ended up being working my way across multiple countries and territories. Fantastic experiences. I wish I could tell you that I had a plan, evil plan behind it. It just happened. Well, no, nothing else.
Interesting. So I think there were some childhood interests and ambitions which today transformed into what you are doing today. And I think that's the best, when we have some interests and passions in our childhood, if we are able to take that further ahead in life. I think, as they say, that if you're working on something which is your passion and something which you love, then you're technically not working at all. So I'm hoping it's the same for you.
Don't say that to my board, Anurag. Oh, damn it. You're part of a board. I reveal I don't know. That was a massive faux pas now. Oh.
Yeah, so I think now I can tell my evil scheme out here as a board member of MEF was to get that confession from you on record.
You see, don't come to humans of telecoms. It will get the truth out of you. This man.
But Dario, you worked with so many companies, and now you moved on to an industry association. So that's a very interesting change. So how did that change of pace come? How did that entire shift in your career come? And how do you think about it when you reflect that? Is this exactly in line with how you'd want things to be? And how do you see future?
Well, I probably have to laugh because I definitely did not see this coming. Potentially, I didn't want it either. It was like, okay. But it just happened, and I'm very happy that it happened. So if I go back in time, I wasn't particularly active at MEF in its early days, and MEF was started in the year 2000. But I was there. I remember discussing that with a few people, Andrew Bad and Rima, etc. As I was an analyst at the time, and it was good to have some support from the analyst group. But what happened towards the end of it is that I was asked to run as a board member. And here, watch out, Anurag, as you're a board member. And it just happened, and I got elected to my surprise, because I wasn't expected that. I thought there was a question of a bit of geographical diversity, and I was coming from Russia at the time. Russia was doing a lot of things on the mobile side, so that was working. And by the time there were been a change in the senior management at MEF, it became a question of first supporting Joanne, which did such a great job as COO as well, and eventually coming back and doing everything in a different format, because I didn't know exactly, but Joanne was then not too happy about being the external face, and I was then helping out on this transformation, and it just turned out that, voila, I became the CEO. So careful what you say yes to, or half a yes to, because it might really happen. I think 5 years later, I'm still here. So somehow things were not so catastrophic, and for MEF, and quite enjoyable from my side, partly to my surprise.
Wonderful, Dario. So basically, board members can tomorrow get absorbed into the organization. I must keep that in mind as well.
Exactly. Careful. Even if you don't exactly expect it, it's just okay. So I'll tell you that I joined the first time I only joined. I was going back to Florence, and I say I can only join 1 day a week, and I thought that was going to discourage people. They say yes. Careful. And that was the beginning of it.
Interesting. So that's been quite an interesting journey so far for you, Dario. And if I ask you that within this entire space, within this entire journey, if there is one moment, or maybe say two moments, which have been extremely memorable and impactful, what would those moments be?
Uh, ah, difficult. But the first moment was probably ending up in Myanmar as I was working for the Ooredoo group at the time, and Ooredoo won one of the two licenses to bring mobile telephony to a country that had been particularly closed. And the lessons that he taught me is how important is what we do. And we look at it, assuming that it's telecommunication, it's a great service, we'll make money, etc. But I was then welcomed in the street when people would ask me what to do and so on. They saw as this great promise of democracy, freedom, economic progress. And they made you feel so important. The entire thing was humbling in the sense where it was a team of two at the time. It was me and another guy that just landed. It wasn't a big thing. And we were there trying to organize the very beginning of an operation of a 3G operation, a mobile operator at the time. And it was, everybody wanted to help. Everybody wanted to have a success because they saw the great value of the telecommunication was bringing to them. It's a bit unfortunate that things didn't turn out exactly as it could have. Myanmar is today in between a civil war and some changes in its way its democracy works. So, but that was such a great time, fantastic way to do it.
Yeah, Myanmar, I agree, is an interesting place. I got a chance to visit there in 2016. And I must say, culturally, economically, politically, it is so different from so many other parts of the world. So I can totally imagine that your time out there and your experiences there would be quite unique.
Well, if you probably mentioned the other things, there was a bit more difficult, a lot more difficult. I was working at MTS, which is the largest telecom in Russia, and I was working there at the time of the first conflict with Ukraine, and MTS had operation both in Ukraine and in Russia. So it became difficult forever to travel, and I was one trying to keep the two. I mean, we're talking of a collaborative environment, a group of people that really were working together. And so all of a sudden, not being able to travel and to do things, that was pretty dramatic. And the background of what's happening as well wasn't very easy. So I think that was probably, if Myanmar was a time where I really thought that's so great, that's when I found it how difficult business can become in managing these difficulties in political environment on a day-to-day business.
Interesting. And moving on from there, Dario, from the telecom side to more about the human side and more specifically about Dario. So, if there is something which we don't know about Dario, and yes, I know I'm a board member, but still, I I urge you to be human and be candid out here. So, if there is something about Dario, something possibly shocking or unknown about Dario that many of us who are listening to this podcast may not know, what would that one thing be?
Well, I think there's potentially, I shouldn't say that, potentially there are some shocking or mildly shocking, I don't know, elements. But I think by now everybody knows what's happening. Everybody knows everything about me one way or another. So I don't know. I think that the only thing that I found people saying that's shocking is when I tell them um, that I am very shy and that people react like something they don't know. I'm an introvert. I'm a natural introvert, and I'm I'm very very shy, incredibly so. And I ended up doing a job which puts me in front of lots of people on a regular basis. But that's what sometimes you do in life. You face your own demons on a regular basis, and I think this one is probably my biggest demon as well. I don't know exactly, but you get used to it. You get by creating some tactics to manage that. But yes, so when people ask me, potentially that's the biggest shocking thing that I have about me.
Interesting. And it's amazing to see that you've taken on a role which is exactly as you said, facing those demons and taking them head on. That's amazing.
Yeah, well, again, I didn't do it on purpose. It just happened. If somebody asked me, I would have been very happy doing Excel spreadsheet, which is our natural talent of mine, I think, probably. But here we go, talking to people and really enjoying it at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, we can't quite imagine MEF without Dario. So I'm glad that the Excel sheets went a little bit in the back burner and Dario came up in front for MEF. All right. And Dario, while you mentioned that you keep visiting home to recharge yourself, but do you have any other passions, any interests or hobbies? So what do you do beyond going back home to recharge yourself?
Okay. A bit of escapism. I mean, I mentioned before that one of my passions still is media in general. So, cinema, great consumption of radio, podcast like this one, anything that takes me somewhere else. Um, and potentially something that I picked up more recently uh, is doing Lego. Well, it started when I was in Russia. Given my limited knowledge of Russian, very limited, um, I then started doing these Lego models, especially spaceships and things like that. So very, very boyish. And it's lovely to be able to follow instructions, clear cut, and have a finished product. Because most of our job is not about clear cut instruction, is about not knowing what's happening next and making it up as it goes along sometimes. And it's so refreshing to be in a situation where you actually know that there is a path and there's a specific one that you have to do. So that puzzle, that element, fantastic for me to recharge, do something completely different.
Wonderful. And that's a very interesting response I've got for the first time of playing with Lego. And I can totally understand that that can be a very meditative experience of its own. So I can totally get you.
Well, the only problem is I need to buy a new house now to full of my Legos. I don't know where to put it. I need to find a space. But here we go.
Interesting, interesting, Dario. All right, now we move over to two games that we play with our guests. So, in the first one, I'm going to be putting up 5 words to you. And for each of them, we urge our guests that be human, be spontaneous, be natural. So, the first thought which comes to your mind, we'd love to hear that thought. So, are you ready for that?
Okay, I'm slightly scared, but why not? Yeah, let's go for it.
Wonderful. So, the first one is telecom.
Changing. The only constant that I can find in telecom is the fact that it's changing. And since when I was a little kid, it was all happening. Still today, it's changing. So yeah, that's an easy one. That telecom is changing.
All right. Motivation.
Ooh, that's a difficult one. My first word, I think spontaneous. Maybe we can create motivations rationally and give it, maybe some very good CEOs out there. They know how to create. I think the motivation is a combination of so many ingredients, and some of them is about personal, is about just happening, and it's about a moment, a spontaneous thing. You have to create it for sure. But it's so difficult, I guess. So I think, yeah, there's a bit of serendipity has to happen if it happens.
Absolutely. All right. The third one is family.
You're talking about it to an Italian about family, and you want one word. I mean, it's not possible, is it? Let's face it. Um, I would probably say home because family, his home, is when you always feel at home. My extended family includes lots of people. I have, surprisingly, I'm really much of a family man, but lived in so many places, and I created small subset of families in multiple places where people have been very nice to me. So I now think that this home is a wide concept of I can go in multiple places. I can go to Indonesia and I find home. I go to Russia and I find home. I go to Qatar and I find home. I go to London, to US, I find home. Even to Brazil, South Africa, lots of places. But that's family. That's where you feel with your own kind. Yeah.
Interesting. As long as when you started that statement, I just hope that in every country where you said you've created family, it's not that once you reach there, somebody's jumping and saying, "Dad's home."
Well, I didn't. I don't think I'm talking about an anagraphical family. Let's put it like that. I don't have family everywhere. I have very good people that I can
Yeah,
call
I
family
agree.
everywhere.
Friends who become family. I totally get that. All right. The fourth one is career.
Uh, chance. I mean, it probably goes with what we've been saying till now. So the fact that I could, for my own limitation, I guess, I could not plan a career, but I was offered incredibly interesting opportunities, which I'd never thought about. So I think it's a big element in chance. And if you go with it, at least you're going to have some fun. And I had plenty of fun. So I like that.
Wonderful. I think that's fairly well spoken. And the final word for us today, where we are, podcast.
I think of radio podcast. It's my first job was in a radio station, and again, very shy, so a bit of a shock to the system. But I love the medium. I love the fact that people talk to each other and you enter into some sort of intimacy. People listen to you while they're doing something else. You enter into their home, to their thoughts sometimes. So I think podcast is the greatest, oldest medium out there. It's talk radio. I can't say how much I love it.
I agree. And, even I've grown up listening so much to radio back in my childhood days. And you're very right. While it's a very fancy word, podcast, but eventually, especially in its original audio format, it's pretty much like radio. And I think it's radio on demand, which makes it a little more convenient to listen to when we get time. But
Yeah.
I feel it's an amazing format, and you get to learn so much more about people, about concepts. Totally get you on that. All right. And moving on to our second game now, which is an even more interesting one. So I'm going to ask you to tell me three statements. Two of them have to be truths, one of them has to be a lie. And I'm expecting that you'll come up with some extremely exotic answers. And I hope that it's very difficult for me to guess which one of them is a lie, but I'll give it a shot. So have you got three statements for us today?
I have, and I have to admit that Anurag told me before about this, and this is something you hear. If you hear the podcast, it's happening. So I did my best. I don't know. I tried very hard. You let me know how it goes at the end. Yes.
All right.
So long time ago, one night in a nightclub, I was paid to DJ.
Okay.
Okay. The second statement, a long time ago, one night in a nightclub, I was paid to dance.
Okay.
And the third one is a long time ago, one night in a nightclub, I was paid to entertain people.
Okay. And what sort of entertainment are we talking here?
Wow, let's leave it. It was all to do with words and talking and taking care of people and making sure that they were VIPs, and I was dealing with some of VIPs, making sure they were having a good time.
Interesting.
All of them are absolutely true, unless you tell me otherwise.
Okay, so your first one was about being a DJ. The second one was about dancing. And the third one was about entertaining.
Yes.
Well, that's a tough one because I have a feeling that you'd be good at all of them. But Dario, I'm going to take my chance and believe that you danced and entertained people, but you did not DJ. So the first one is a lie, and the second and the third one are truths. So am I right out here?
I'm so disappointed with you, Anurag, because you got it right.
Oh,
You did get it right. Damn it.
interesting.
Interesting. Yes, I used to be a DJ, and I used to be paid for being a DJ, but I've never been a DJ in a nightclub, so I've never done that. And to my surprise, though, at one point, complete luck and so on. But yes, I was paid for the other things, partly because I didn't have anybody else, and I just happened to be there. I guess it was just very uneventful. But the only thing that I did do in my life as a career, being a DJ, I didn't get paid for in a nightclub. So you found exactly the right thing. Well done, Anurag.
Interesting. So, to all the listeners here, in case if anybody wants more details and more scoop about how exactly was Dario's dance, and more importantly, something which I'm going to connect with him offline, that what exactly did the entertainment, and I'm saying that with as much emphasis and excitement. In case if you would like to know more about what exactly was the entertainment which our dear CEO of MEF was delivering out there, you're welcome to reach out to him.
I'm already laughing. I'll explain all the entertainment, and you will see. You will see.
Interesting, Dario. All right. And with that, we come to our final section now, Dario, our sign off section. So, two quick questions here. The first one that, we know that you're all over the industry and all over the world. So, if somebody wants to meet you in the coming weeks and months, which are some of the conferences you're attending and where can one get to meet Dario?
Well, plenty of chances, it seems. I'm probably revealing the time where we're recording these, but at the end of September, MEF is going to be at MWC Las Vegas, so that's going to be in US. But the week after, which is in October, first week in October, we're in Paris in the Google headquarters to talk about RCS and RCS World. That's an event that has been created by MEF to give a bit more of a talking point for everybody involved in RCS. And by the way, since last year, when we had our first one in Dublin, a lot of things has happened in RCS. So don't come and talk to me necessarily, but go and talk to all the right people that are doing incredible stuff in RCS. And then later on, we'll be in London, and that's already, if you want to catch us in November, where we're going to be for our AGM. Very important, if you remember. Come and see how we're doing. Tell us if you're doing very well. But the day after is the end of November, and we have our traditional omni-channel conference when we look at all different versions of messaging and so on. So plenty of chances, I think, to see each other in the next 3 months. I should also say we're going to be in Paris again in the headquarters of Orange. They're going to host us and all the entire MEF community to talk about the future of the wholesale market as well. It's a fantastic event, open to all players and all members of MEF. So please put it in your calendar the first week in December as well. Come and join us in Paris. Great time to be in Paris too, I think, on top of everything else.
Wonderful, Dario. So, people, you have a number of different forums, and of course, the mobile ecosystem forum where you can interact with Dario. And Dario, finally, our last question, our signature question: what does being human mean to you? What sort of a human being would you want the world to remember you as?
Okay. Well, I think being humans means being fallible. And then know that machines don't make mistakes, but a machine would not admit or is not meant to admit mistakes. I think we need to celebrate the fact that we don't get it all right and understand and reflect on that. I think that's really being human. That's what makes us inquisitive, interesting, and that what made us change in the world realistically, because we kept on doing things differently. And we did get things wrong a few times. Well, talking about that, eventually. About me, though, I don't even know if people will necessarily remember much about what I've done, but the people that I've met in life, I hope they're going to be saying that I was honest, that I didn't intend to harm anybody, and I was probably respectful of everybody else. I mean, I hope I'm managing that. But that's really I think, essentially the most important thing. I don't think a lot of people will end up in the history books, which is sometimes you end up for history books for very bad things. So, but if within our community, if we could just be acknowledge that we meant well and we tried our best, that would be a great achievement, I think.
Wonderful, Dario. And I think there are some fantastic thoughts. And let me put it on record. You have always been a very cherished member of the telecom industry, of the telecom fraternity. And one will always remember the wonderful impact you created on all of us and all our organizations. So, for sure, you're very much etched into memory of everyone already. So, that's that.
Thank you.
All right. And on that note, Dario, thank you so much for your time. I understand that you have so many conferences and so many things, and board members such as us make you run around a bit as well with our never ending questions. But it's amazing to listen to your human side today and see so many new things that we've come to know. So, on behalf of Humans of Telecom, I thank you for your time, and I do hope we get to cross paths soon.
Thank you again for having me.
Wonderful. And as always, to our wonderful listeners, thanks a lot for tuning into the show. We hope this episode gave you a good glimpse of the human side of Dario Betti, an individual whose childhood passion for technology and telecom has eventually led him into a chance career of being in telecom, someone who has had interesting and fascinating experiences in places such as Myanmar and Russia, an introvert who is facing his demons and today has become the face of the telecom and CPaaS industry. And finally, a DJ, a dancer, a CEO, and also an Italian with a truly global family. That for us is Dario Betti. So, if you enjoyed today's episode, do stay tuned in because we shall soon be releasing yet another episode and another compelling story from the telecom space. And do follow the podcast on your preferred streaming channel. On behalf of Humans of Telecom, this is your host Anurag Aggarwal signing off for now. Take care.